All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Wonder Egg Priority, Episode 5.
We got quite the episode last week.
Yeah, Episode 4 gave us quite a bit because it kind of continued off from the previous episode with the fight and everything. But we've been introduced now to Sawaki Momoe. We've now got a quartet of sorts.
Indeed.
They've accepted each other in a really cool way in that they were really trying to be really considerate of Momoe and kind of giving her a lot of affirmation with regards to her femininity, because a lot of times people would be bullying her for her appearance.
Or just the accidental stuff of falling in love with her because, she's so manly.
Okay. Oh, okay.
All right.
But now that Oto's kind of got her name, there was a little bit of a pause in Oto's kind of gate at the end of the episode.
Oh,
so is there a potential thing of where Oto knows her from somewhere before?
Maybe,
possibly.
And then of course there's more stuff that we can get into with the whole teacher situation.
Well, yeah, I think that if anything, this was the beginning prologue of sorts of getting all the main characters into the same deal here, and now they can go and do these things potentially together.
Yes, and I'm curious how that would change things, because for the most part it's been done as an introduction either to a character that is just for that episode or with one of the main
ones that
girls.
are just for those character episodes are completely different because they're in eggs.
Right.
None of these girls have been in eggs.
Right.
So that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anything, maybe seeing a little bit of a way of which they each have someone that they're doing all this for.
Sure.
We need a little bit of that potentially with Momoe.
Yeah, we could get like a group hangout or something.
Yeah, and then also just having Neiru be the one that has most of the kind of experience and info on this world and the fantastical side of it.
And we still do have a lot of mystery about her. Yeah, because we know that she's the president apparently, but
yeah. So,
okay.
Y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. Alright everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. Okay, that was
an episode.
That was a heavy episode.
Yeah.
I think this episode probably made me the most uncomfortable in a weird way than almost all the other episodes have thus far. Because a lot of the other episodes had stuff that was more on, I would call the weirdly the violent side of things. This episode talked on something around the idea of guilt with regards to how you respond to the fact that people killed themselves.
Gotcha.
And we have Neiru being the focus character because her situation with regards to her sister is one that we got a little bit of a twist on.
Right.
She did kill herself, but it was after she violently attacked her sister, Neiru.
Right. And
which...
Neiru doesn't actually want to save her sister, apparently. She wants to, be able to...
she wants to be able to...
keep functioning, you know?
She wants to be able to save her own self, basically, through this by using the eggs and the process of going to help the girls in the eggs to keep herself from feeling the pain of what happened to her. Now, there's multiple angles that we could go into this, but the literal response is that she feels no physical pain from the scar, which we saw is a gash. Like, it's a large...
Yeah, this isn't just like a simple, stab. It's like...
Yeah, in fact, in some ways, it almost feels like she lied, because that's not a stab.
Right. That felt like a very, sort of trying to downplay the situation, but really it was, maybe a stab, but also, slashes and multiple of them,
Yeah, exactly. It looked really, really brutal. Yeah. And that part, made me uncomfortable in and of itself, but it was when we had then, from there, the idea of, what do we do? What is our responsibility? What is our response, if you will, in that? And there was the whole talk of guilt specifically being something that, people are just bound to feel. But then there's also just the ownership people then take on this and that just
right. Because I feel like a lot of the stuff that they're doing in this show and the girls are going through is a way of each of them kind of coming to terms with the fact that someone at varying levels of closeness to them died and specifically killed themselves, and how do you deal with that, right?
Yeah.
And this is kind of their way of trying to heal. And the thing is that there are different ways that people heal, right? Everyone's different. And in the case of like Rika, she brings up like, do we have to do this? We are risking our lives to do this. You know, if the you know, as a meta thing for, you know, her question, if this is them trying to heal, but they're actively putting themselves in danger, and especially if it ends up being something that causes some kind of permanent damage to them as a product of that,
right?
Then the question really has to be asked of, do we need to do this? Should we do this? You know, because it was the choice made by the people that killed themselves to do so, and you know, is saving them like you know? It's,
well, they're not saving them.
Well, they have the promise that they will eventually save.
Yeah,
them.
but that's
right. There's the
way.
whether they believe that will happen, but then on top of that, you know, it's the that's mucking with someone's life in a very
we have only the goodwill of these not
QBs
QBs to go on that's actually possible.
Right.
Neiru is the only one that's even close to being able to do it from the mechanical standpoint introduced in the story. However, there is no literal proof we have that that's even possible. And thematically, as the story progresses, they're bringing up a lot of the things that we're laying down in our theories with regards to the fact that this might be actually more regarding a group therapy session.
Sure.
Where it's about them learning to be able to deal with it and handle these situations.
Yep.
And that there might be something going on in the real world, specifically with Otoi and the Koito situation that happened before, that needs to be understood.
Right. Yeah.
Given how connected now they're even bringing things like Sawaki being the niece of
the teacher.
And
having Rika straight up just say a lot of the things that we were thinking about the teacher of like, oh yeah, what if he was, you know, in a relationship with Koito?
What if she got pregnant?
What if she got pregnant? You know, what if the reason that he keeps visiting Oto or Ai is because he thinks she might have some evidence of what was going on between them, right?
Yep.
And the way that like that kind of stuff got brought up, and the way the music in this show is awesome in general, right?
Yeah.
But in that scene in particular, it was like
pointed,
it was very pointed, like a fun, like just like, now granted they started bringing up a very serious topic, right? But I started getting a lot more nervous. The music got a lot more tense, and I kept thinking back to certain things that were like, you know, clues that she basically was seeing, and either was kind of ignoring them because or just didn't understand, you know, and now is then maybe feeling the guilt of, oh God, I was starting to realize I could have realized what was going on and I didn't. You know, there's it's all sorts of messy.
Yeah, and then we have the Neiru situation where you can definitely feel that she's shut herself off to the incident that happened with her, and thus is quite cold, a bit unfeeling, but also is not a fan of people getting physically close to her.
Right.
And thus also does not have a lot of emotional vulnerability, but definitely needs this friend group. Like, you can tell that she definitely, like, enjoys this and, like, takes a lot of, value in it.
She's still hanging out with them, you know. It's like she could very easily just go off on her own like she does later in the episode, you know, but she hasn't until now.
Yeah. But there was very much this like, oh, you should take responsibility, Neiru, like some kind of like like vibe I got throughout this whole thing where when it comes down to it, she maybe is doing this to save herself.
Sure.
But not just in the physical pain department.
But emotionally.
But emotionally as well, in that it helps her cope with the fact that she does feel something about this whole, you know, crazy incident that happened with her.
Because the fact that she said that the scar specifically itches and keeps her from being able to sleep when she tries to forget her sister, right?
Yeah.
So she is literally losing sleep over, what happened, right?
Yeah.
And like forgetting, that makes sense, right? That makes sense that someone would want to forget.
Yeah.
But the problem is that's then not actually dealing with, like, that's putting off the situation kind of indefinitely, right?
Sure.
And to each their own. If that seems to be what you need to do, then who is anyone else to say otherwise, right?
Yeah.
But there is that part of her that is also conflicted about it because she feels guilty about trying to forget her sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to say nothing of if there was some reason why she felt like, oh, it was her fault that her sister stabbed her and and then killed herself.
Well,
and all
yeah,
that,
she's
right?
probably been searching for the reasons why,
Exactly.
or what have you, for a long time.
Yep.
What did you think though about the obsession of beauty in the final eggs occupant? Because I think I have a couple theories, but there's a couple things I also feel like I'm missing slightly.
Mm-hmm. The thing that stood out to me is that it felt in parallel to the thing that Rika said when she was talking about her mom and how she was obsessed with being perfect, and that's kind of like it felt like a similar like situation for this girl here of like, oh yeah, or maybe the girl was even the girl even started talking about her mom and how she tried to do all these things to stay beautiful, but that was even like the attempts were ugly in a way, and like, I don't know, like maybe it could have a connection to Neiru in the idea of Neiru being so high functioning that like I don't know, something in that regard.
Okay,
but
so what if it has to do with the scar, literally? In that Neiru has a scar that will make it so that if she's ever physically intimate with anyone, they might not call her pretty.
Okay.
So it's a thing of where she's a little bit obsessed with the appearance of having everything being put together. Mm-hmm. But it's a fleeting thing because it can be ripped away by someone else coming and betraying you and basically tarnishing that in some way. And I don't think that Neiru is so self-obsessed with her appearance that she's actually bothered by that. But it is a still very serious, I would say, source of insecurity of like, oh, yeah, I have this massive scar.
Right.
And then when I bring it up to people, they're going to be like, well, how'd you get it? And then I have to relive the pain of the fact that my sister killed herself all over again.
Yep.
So it's like she's wanting to forget and move on, but she literally cannot.
Right. Neiru, I would definitely say, is very proud, but it's one of the ones that isn't as obvious, right? Because just because she's cold and detached doesn't mean that she's proud necessarily, but it's an easy thing to attribute based on some of the things that she does. And it might not be the kind of like the more like stuck up outward appearance of the personality for someone like Rika, right, that Neiru is so bothered by. But she did downplay the whole thing of, oh, she stabbed me. No, she like went axe murderer on you.
Your back.
Yeah. Like the for the rest of the girls, if you have someone close to you that killed themselves, that is going to destroy you. That is going to be all sorts of emotional baggage and things like that.
Right.
That isn't. This is a bit of like no comparing, but this is a bit of an escalation. Yeah. Like. And how in the hell do you deal with that?
Yeah, in some ways it actually makes sense why Rika is one that gets on, or Neiru. Rika gets on Neiru's nerves a lot, is because Rika's problems probably are getting compared a bit.
Sure.
To Neiru's, basically.
Right, Neiru's like, I'm with everything that I went through, I'm handling it just fine,
Yeah, why are you complaining?
Oh no, a fan of yours killed herself.
Yeah, my own sister tried to kill me or something. I don't even know why she did it. That's the part that I think is more obvious, is she's not actually trying to save her sister. She might be just like Otoi, trying to figure out answers, and she just wants to talk to her sister one more time and be like, why?
Sure.
What did I do? Like, what could have gone through your mind that made you want to do this? And that's, I think that's the question that I think a lot of people wrestle with when someone kills themselves, and that's why I think a lot of this makes me feel really uncomfortable, is that Rika's answer of it's not our fault and it's not our responsibility is true on some level, and yet it's also not. Because
interesting.
no, this is I think a very awkward point that I think a lot of people don't really get, because they don't actually know someone that's killed themselves. But I do know someone that's killed themselves, and the rough part about it is that you were a part of their life. Mm-hmm. So you had, at the very least, influence and some measure of emotional connection to them.
Gotcha.
Responsibility is a very...
big word?
No, it's a very black and white word.
Ah, okay.
People usually talk about responsibility being something that you have, which means you either have it or you don't.
Gotcha.
But connection, in what it is at the basic level, is sometimes just conversation. It's not something you have. It's just something you do.
Okay.
But the measure at which your conversation or your interactions or your connection is nebulous. It can be anything and everything, because you can put more effort or more thought or more connection, not more connection, but more emotion or more something into it. You can care more about the connection by just the slightest bit of effort.
Sure.
That, however, is something that could be completely changed by the way that they receive said connection. So it all gets up in the air and becomes entirely nebulous, and yet the most important thing that human beings function on is the connection between other people.
Okay.
If you do not have a solid connection with people outside of yourself, you will eventually waste away into nothing.
It's the baby animals that have like the bottle that's on like a metal frame, with like the milk, versus the bottle that's on a metal frame that has like some like fur or fuzz, or something put on it, so they can feel that connection to something.
Exactly.
And the ones that don't have the fur or whatever, they end up just dying, in infancy.
Yeah.
Even though they have everything they physically need to support themselves.
Exactly. And this gets full on biological. Mm-hmm. So when Oto is dealing with her just frustrations about the situation with Koito being one that she doesn't fully understand, the reason why she's so just emotionally in a mess because of it is because she did have a connection to Koito, but she doesn't know her own feelings regarding it.
Exactly.
So Rika is offering a very easy, I would say, and somewhat in some ways healthy solution, which is, hey, take care of yourself first, then you can take care of other people. That is, for the most part, relatively just sound advice, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
There's almost no real issue with it, principally. But when you get into specifics about the fact that these girls are in the emotion and the full-on pain of these things that they've experienced thus far, saying we'll just stop, isn't helpful. It is not helpful. Well, it does not meet people where they're at, usually.
Yeah, totally. And the idea that I feel like that wasn't necessarily what Rika was saying,
but it doesn't matter. I understand the
Wouldn't
idea.
It?
No, I really don't think it matters. It's the idea that Otoai, for instance, is not in a healthy enough place, relationally even with them, to be able to just go, well, right, yeah, I can just snap that, and suddenly I don't feel responsible for it. No, it doesn't matter.
Okay, yeah. So the reason why I don't have as much issue with it is because I don't see it so much as being a thing of talking about whether or not a person feels responsible, but talking about more of the idea of whether or not they are, and then in an absolute sense, and then basically giving them the alternative option, so that it's if you still choose to do this, you totally can.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. But it's essentially the same kind of advice of someone to be like, well, just, you don't need to be depressed, so stop being depressed.
I wholeheartedly disagree.
Yeah, but the thing is that the people who say these kinds of things tap into the truth of the matter, but there's no connection necessarily in it. The best part about it was when Rika was like, you have your friends right here.
Yep.
Aren't we enough? Mm-hmm. That's powerful. That's vulnerable. I really love that. But that was it as far as connection goes. The objective kind of reality of the fact that they didn't cause this stuff necessarily. It's probably for the most part true, but she can't actually know that on every individual basis.
Right, and
that's why it's not a good, solo foundation for a guiding principle.
And I absolutely agree that as a solo foundation guiding principle that wouldn't be good. The reason why I think I liked it is because it was something that was brought up not as like this is the only thing that we can think of, but we haven't really talked about this yet.
Yeah,
right?
It's good to talk about
because there's the total possibility that like the circumstances could be different. Maybe they aren't totally smashing the opposition and being totally fine and defeating the monsters and doing all of that stuff that's helping them. But if it was something that was less than that, right, then it would be a lot more urgent that someone brings up this idea that there is theoretically an alternative. You don't need to do this. If you choose to do this, go for it, more power to you, right? But just know that
right.
If you find yourself reaching your own limits or things like that, that is something for you to decide and figure out and determine and
yeah, but that's not how Rika communicated it. We can see the objective kind of point of why she's bringing this up here. It's basically the idea that they're all racked with guilt surrounding the whole thing. So wouldn't we be freer if we found a way to basically let go of that?
Sure.
Because guilt is something that I would say is not wholly unhealthy, but shame is not guilt. And shame could be something that a lot of these girls are being led by. And in some ways, Neiru might be the perfect example of that shame.
I get the feeling she probably is. Yeah, and because I feel like this is something where Rika doesn't know properly how to deal with her own feelings on the matter, right?
Yeah, so
because
she's processing them.
She's processing it, and because she's one, they're all young and immature in their own different ways, but also she's a much more rough around the edges kind of person. She isn't aware of the effect that her words might have on the people around her, right? And in her situation in particular, she was probably the most removed from the friend that, well, because it wasn't even a friend of hers, right? It was a fan, right? And it's I didn't even really know this person, not really, and then they killed themselves, right? And she's like, I wish they hadn't done that, and I know I messed up and played a part in that, but even if we did bring them back, they might not want to be alive. And like that's something that that I feel like is really good to have at least brought up, so that way the girls can make sure that they have decided within themselves who they're doing this for.
Right.
Are they doing it for the person, or are they doing it for themselves?
Yeah, and Neiru has enough self-awareness because of how long she's been doing this that she knows that she's doing this for herself.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yep, good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but the reason why we would basically make the disconnect with regards to responsibility in this is so that you can then come to the standpoint of understanding, well, who am I doing this for? It's not really so that you can then make some big judgment call as to whether or not, you should be involved in this at all. That's just toxic behavior, I would say. It's primarily just a thing of, okay, you just need to make the choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Make a true free choice.
Is this for you or is this for them?
Right.
And in some ways, I would agree with Neiru in that it's better to do it for yourself than to do it for others. And that's where Otoai, in a lot of ways, rejects what Rika is saying, because she's saying, I am doing this for me. I need answers.
Right.
Which is kind of what Neiru wants as well, but we didn't get that explicitly stated.
Right.
It just
Neiru wants resolution, And,
well, they all want resolution.
Well, right,
but the reason as to why Neiru is probably doing this, in addition to the seeking out a salve for the pain, is because it feels better than the alternative.
Right. It's something where it's the resolution isn't necessarily inherent on the person coming back or even wanting to stay alive if they do bring them back. And that's maybe one of the reasons why none of them have questioned too deeply of whether or not they actually can. Because there's the stuff of like, oh, I do stuff and then the statue feels like it's getting warmer. But that's not a lot, right? Considering that they're risking their lives and doing all of this stuff, like that's pretty like
it's pretty loose.
Yeah, like that could easily be flubbed. We're in a
fantastical world, so a lot of their beliefs about what is possible or not are being stretched.
Yep,
which is okay. because that's a natural response, I would say. But the idea that we would then break things down into responsibility when this is an emotional situation and these are decisions being made emotionally, not based on some objective reality. I really think that Rika's stuff that she was saying there, she knew that she was wrong in certain areas. And that's why she basically made the point.
Oh, really?
That's why someone needs to be the bad guy. It's not the hard truth. It's the hard truth spoken in a abrasive way to bring out the truth, the actual truth from the other girls, which is, why are you doing this?
Sure.
And thus, then she gets an actual answer from Neiru, which is, I have to leave. Mm-hmm. Not because I want to, but because I have to do this.
Gotcha.
This is a part of what my decision already made. You guys are all new here. I've been doing this for a while. So then she goes and gets more eggs and starts to continue doing the thing.
This doesn't have to be something that takes the conversation in a different direction or whatever, but just for the sake of saying it, I think that there's a good chance that Rika did believe what she said, of that we're not responsible for this, and personally, I would agree. Like while I think that there are things that people do that because through connection we have influence on each other's lives, and so if
it's just using responsibility as the word it's an obvious kind of thing with regards to that. I don't think the point of this is that anyone feels responsible for the act that led the other person to suicide. They feel guilty, though, about the fact that the person was led to suicide. There's a difference there.
Well, sure.
That's why I think it's kind of like splitting hairs to be like, well, why do you feel guilty? It's like, because you had connection.
Well, sure, but I think there's a lot of situations where feelings can be fickle, and someone can feel responsible even if they aren't actually responsible, right? It's the
I'm with you. I'm not saying that they should feel responsible, or even that any of them were remotely responsible. I'm saying that the argument is based on something that is not building the connection necessarily between the girls. It's something that is trying specifically to antagonize something by saying something that's obviously true, so that it attacks the feelings of the characters and brings them towards revealing what their true reason is with this. And
hence the whole, I'll be the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that she's aware of.
Yep.
All the other girls are aware of it for the most part, because they're pretty intelligent for the most part. But also, by the by, when someone tells you, eating too much, if you are overeating, they say you're overeating, or you're not being healthy right now. The person is not stupid and realizes that this is what they're doing is unhealthy. They go and say, "Oh, I know, but I'm not doing this because I, feel like it's just something I'm doing to cope. Basically, it's doing this. I'm doing this for me.
Well, yeah,
I don't care whether or not it's factually,
Who are other people to say what is healthy for someone else? Because in that moment, maybe if you could say that from the physical perspective, it's something that is unhealthy. But if it's something that that keeps you from some worse vice, or it helps you get through the day or whatever, who are you to say?
Or leave you in chronic pain.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, which is Neiru.
Yeah, exactly. It's up to you to figure out what is good and healthy for you.
Right,
yeah.
And that's why I love Neiru leaving, because it basically makes very clear why Rika is still new in this whole conflict of things here.
Okay, sure.
And she's like, yeah, duh. Of course we're not responsible, but that's not why we're doing this. We're not doing this based on responsibility or stuff. We're doing these based on really strong feelings. We're not doing this based on an objective reality of whether or not we're responsible. All of them on some level are aware of that. It's whether or not their feelings basically allow them to then make healthy decisions based on the objective reality. Whether they can face it seriously is not going to be because Rika states it as fact. It's like, this is why I'd say this episode also made me a little bit uncomfortable, it's that I know how I've done that kind of Rika instance things to myself in order to kind of force me to change on a specific thing. And it doesn't really work any better than if someone else was to come and do the same thing of like, hey, by the way, you're doing something wrong. Like, this is the wrong way to do this. It's like, I'm not stupid. I know that. The reasons why I do that have nothing to do with that. Most of those reasons have to do with things beyond that are about regarding the connection, the emotional state and stuff like that. Those kinds of things can be met with what Rika was really wanting, which is, hey, we're all here. Why don't we all connect in this? Which shows, I would say, just her general just immaturity with regards to this.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's something where I'll speak for myself. I know there have been so many times where I was doing something. I thought I was doing something for particular reasons, and it wasn't actually for those reasons. But that's what I told myself, because that seemed the most obvious, and it took someone, either stating something or usually it would be when they would like ask a question, of like,
why are you doing this?
Yeah. Is it because of this? And they'd ask about the thing that I, like, or are you act like, like the equivalent of like, are you responsible in this situation? Then it's like, well, no, I guess I'm not. And then it'd be like, oh, right. But the reason I'm doing it is, then.
But I would say that's something that doesn't usually lead to lasting change.
Oh, those are the few times in my life where it has led to lasting change. Like,
really?
Yeah, because usually if someone tells me something and they state it or whatever, then
it sticks with you?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because if someone states something to me, there will be that part of myself that basically is like, well, but what about the alternatives? Or if I agree, it'll be that mental assent thing. But it's the I know that. Right, I know that is factually accurate or whatever, but then it won't bring about any change because it's no new information. But if it's something,
so it has to be new information,
or it has to be something where I somehow arrive at that conclusion, even if it's.
So they didn't do anything then. What is the thing that they did that maybe I'm missing something key here? But I'm talking about how what Rika did here that helps you actually bring about lasting change.
Because if it's something that riles me up specifically so that way I start taking a second look at things within myself, then that gives me the chance to see what might be hiding under the rug, so to speak. And then I can be like, oh, is that what this was? And then I can actually decide how I want to deal with that.
Right.
And oftentimes I just don't know because I have something that works, moderately well, but but there's still an issue that I'm not addressing because lack of self-awareness and or uncomfortable with it, and therefore unconsciously looking the other way.
Yeah, I think that self-awareness thing is probably the biggest bit of it, is that their kind of hammer being brought into the situation shatters like illusions or something like that about that you are self-aware, and you're like, oh, maybe I wasn't self-aware. These are the areas in which I'm not because they brought it up in this way. But I think that's almost entirely dependent on then you as a person, not really with regards to what they're saying. So I would still argue then that it's actually not the best way to do it.
I would definitely say that there would be better ways that Rika could have gone about doing it. But for the kind of person that she is and the age that she is, I'd say that's reasonably.
Well, even then. I would think it's not actually then about the actual contents of the words. It's about things like repetition and things like the timing of it. It has actually nothing to do with the contents then. And that's why I think it's more about the connection, not about actually what they're saying.
Gotcha.
Because then, if that's the case, then the truth of the matter that's being brought up through the indirect aspect of the truth in the communication, because it's, from a person's words, so it can get, mixed up and stuff. That stuff has to hit like a specific dark point to like resonate with you so that you take it seriously. Because I've seen many times in most like kind of societal, communal kind of situations where someone is stating something that is fact as basically like a thing of like, hey guys, like come on, like be like trying to bring about more self-awareness, and people reject it because of the way it's being brought up.
Right.
And thus it's not actually about the content. Someone else will come by 6 months later, say the exact same thing
in a different
but with a
way,
slightly different twist, but also it's a different time, it's a different person.
Yep.
There's all these other emotional reasons as to why they did it, not actually based in logic, based entirely in the vessel through which the principle, the truth, the good thing is being communicated. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I have problems primarily with the Rika's just being wise here. It's like, well, no, she's stating something true, but she's not necessarily being wise or saying anything profound in the way she's saying it. Like,
I think there's a very good chance that for her it is, and in this,
that's a good point.
And in this specific instance,
that's a good point.
We know that 2 of the 4 people here are truly doing it for themselves. And since Rika is one of the other 2, it's like, okay,
she might be just preaching to herself.
Yeah, like Momoe, maybe, if you feel guilty or responsible or like you have to, then maybe this is something that can help you. It ended up not really being something that was necessarily helpful for Neiru and I, but there's a very good chance that it could have been, right? Yeah, that it's something where they're like
totally.
Because I is such a kind of like kind, quiet soul kind of a thing, like that I could totally see it being something where she's like, my friend killed herself, and not only do I not know why, but maybe because I don't know why, there could be all those fears, doubts, and insecurities of, did I have something to do with it? Yep. If she was in a relationship with the teacher and that's why it happened, could I have done something differently? Could I have talked to her about it?
The answer is always yes.
Sure.
The answer is always yes, and this is the part that is really uncomfortable to talk about whenever you're in a relationship with someone that killed themselves, is there's obviously things that you could have done differently.
Yep.
And if we want to go about this as logically as possible, there is probably technically something that might have changed something.
Sure.
But that doesn't matter.
Right.
It does not matter. This is
not
why,
your fault. Yeah.
No, it's like it's not just that it's not your fault, because that's based in responsibility again, of a thing of like, oh, you caused it or you didn't cause it. The act of being connected to someone in that regard is meaning that you are feeling a lot of things right now, and you need to acknowledge those feelings so that you can be a whole and healthy person.
Right.
It's just primarily to help you. This is why I have problems with the world being something that we readily accept that they're going to help them, because the probably best healthy function of this world space that they're in is that they end up being able to help themselves through the process of all losing someone. It's rather curious, isn't it, that they all know someone that killed themselves, and yet they're going to help people in eggs that killed themselves, when it's like, well, wait a minute, why are they in eggs when the friends that you know aren't?
Right. Why wouldn't
there's something odd about that.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be something where they're helping other people that knew someone that killed themselves rather than like the actual people that killed themselves? Yeah,
exactly.
And then
that's why I think it's more about coming to terms with the fact that there are plenty of questions and confusing feelings that you're going through right now.
Yep.
That's okay. Accept it. Let them go through. Let them happen. Experience them. Don't deny it. Don't try to shame yourself, or don't put into questions of like, what could I have done, or all this stuff, or who's responsible. All that is a waste of time.
Right.
Let it happen, and you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I feel like too many people get lost in the weeds when it comes to suicide regarding how they're supposed to respond to it. And that is not the point. That is not the point. Something horrible happened, and we all need to make sure that each other are okay. That's it.
Yeah.
We need to just be here for each other in the midst of the whole thing. And the fact that this story presents some kind of hope of like maybe you can save them, that feels almost insidious and dirty.
Right.
Because it's like,
Yep.
I feel like then the suicide thing is an obfuscation of what they're really here for, which gets into creepy territory with regards to Koito and...
Sure, yeah, we didn't even really talk about the teacher and that whole thing.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet. Do you want to?
Or the crazy laugh that the two entities did when they were talking?
No, just one of them.
Okay. Just the one of them, yeah. But that whole scene was just like, okay.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah.
Because they're people. Like, I have to assume that at this point. Those are people, and the way they talk and the way they act is that they are not some, like, spiritual entity, some kind of fantastical QB-like creature.
They could
They're
be...
people.
I mean, I feel like they could be some kind of other entity in some regard. Like, they don't have to be, like, human, like people, right?
No,
like,
I understand that, and yet the negotiation, the way in which
it feels
they
very...
had the game kind of thing of that little conversation.
Oh, yeah.
It felt very much like adults trying to figure out how to just interact in an awkward situation with kids.
Yeah, like they're not so alien and different that they can't understand, okay, just one game, right?
Yep.
And yet creepy laughs and, if you tell them not to do something, then they'll do it just to, rebel and assert their own identity.
Yeah, I could totally see this being the alien study of, like, girls that have been abducted in these really traumatic situations, and it is a very QB type situation. But the more and more we go and build things up with the teacher, I'm like, no, these are people.
Well,
and there's some weird therapy shit going on here that's not at all regulated and safe.
Sure,
like it feels very. I don't like it.
The other vibe that I get is that it might be something of some kind of projection manifestation of, like, if this does have something that is sort of like coming from the psyches of the girls, it's like some representative thing that's not necessarily like an individual, but like some amalgamation of observations of adults and things like that, and then all turning into this potentially nightmarish thing. But teacher Rika just basically said most of the things that we were thinking. Like,
why did the show decide to do that?
Yeah, like, that really felt like we just introduced the main cast. Now we're going to introduce potentially the main antagonist.
Yep.
Like, this was almost a teacher episode.
Yeah, no. I'm with you, but let's go with our main theories about what's going on with the show overall, and then use if we can the new data that we've kind of not really new data, but kind of the guesses that people are making with regards to the Koito teacher situation.
That line up a lot with our predictions.
Yeah. So the one that I think that makes the most sense here immediately is that the girls are not real, and Oto is projecting out her own worries about what happened through the voices of these girls.
And these are the different ways in which she handles it.
She's handling it. Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that makes sense. Man. But that's the one that I kind of don't want it to be, because it takes away these characters' agency, because they're not characters, they're projections. Right,
exactly.
Of
and then
Oto,
what's the point of the specifics and the
So if they're all characters, and this is something where Rika is the one who's a little bit of the more brazen in her mature discussions and stuff, it makes sense that she brings this up.
Yep.
But she's also maybe sensing a little bit, because I think we both have as well, that Oto's reason why she keeps flashing back to those instances in little drip feeds there is because she's intentionally not wanting to remember those things there, and she's kind of in that see no evil kind of state. But she feels guilty about that when she interacts with the girls and stuff, because she sees the way they're handling their situations. And maybe she feels a little bit inspired to be like, no, I can handle this.
Right.
And then she remembers a little bit, and she's like, no. And then pushes that back down again.
And which is really just so fitting because with the way that this show started, it was with, well, one, her just not being in a good place, but two, having to make the decision when she wants to just do nothing, that, you know what, maybe she can be powerful. Maybe she can affect change, right? Yep. Maybe there is a crazy, quad keyblade thing inside of her that she can whip out and, beam the evil thing with, and everything will be a bit better.
Maybe, Oto, there is something you can do.
Yeah.
But we don't know yet. And in a lot of ways, I don't really feel like there is any definitive way of knowing until we get a clear idea of what's the line between the real world and whatever this world of eggs and, and magical girls is.
They did seem to be able to navigate the world of the magical land and all of that stuff, and the parts that looked like they could be real but weren't, and then the parts that were obviously like the underground tunnel and stuff. So that makes me think that at least the characters are much less likely to be confused about which one they're in.
Yep. Yep. They could navigate it.
Right. They could navigate it. And that's good for me to know as the audience, even if I can't navigate it, which makes me nervous,
Right.
But okay.
So most of the time that they're interacting with each other, for the most part, is in the egg world, basically.
Right. Which makes sense.
But they have regularly now in different group numbers and stuff gone over to Otoai's house.
Yep.
I just wanted to bring up the idea, though, that I think the only other place that they've been to that could have been an instance of where they were in the real world, but not, was when they were at Neiru's office.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that one feels almost, okay, just going to throw this out here. It feels a little bit too idealized and out of... I still don't accept the idea of Neiru being a CEO or something like that. That feels a bit too... I don't know, grand.
Also,
but who knows? She could be.
Right,
anime, it doesn't really matter.
Anime shenanigans, Hinamatsuri, like jokes and and things like that.
Well, this isn't. Okay. No. You're losing me.
Oh, the one character in Hinamatsuri that randomly became like the business manager or whatever when she was like 12.
Yeah, I'm not following. So
okay, just the idea that it could be a joke, but
I don't think it's a joke.
Yeah. But the other thing that was introduced this episode is the idea that when you're in one of the egg worlds, not everything has to be what it seems, because the girl's hair was actually the monster. Right. Now, if we take that, who's to say we couldn't extrapolate it to like there being a whole person that is the monster, or different things like that? Who's to say that they aren't in an egg world right now?
Well, we have no...
There's no see no evils, right? Granted.
Well, no. But... I mean, we have no hard mechanics that show that this is in the real world. So until such time as we get hard mechanics in that regard, this is a third type of environment, although it is similar enough to the egg worlds in that... they go into a space and release basically the egg.
Right, both the egg and the place where they get the eggs are extra dimensional whatevers. Yeah,
little planes. And those, it's probably just smarter for the show to not get too in depth into that because that wastes time.
Yep. Yeah. This is a one core show.
Yeah, but the entities that share the space with them, I just at this point it's to me, I really feel like this is something along the lines of an experiment.
Okay.
Because the idea that at any point in the environment they can just be like, hey,
that very much seems like someone that has like microphones and cameras and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And
pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, exactly. Very much man behind the curtain kind of thing. And then the idea that there's some kind of manifestation of them there, and yet they're always in that spot. They seem very innocuous, and yet they talk to them everywhere. What?
Yeah,
like it feels too boring, if you will, to be in the fantastical or even really the supernaturals, like specifically.
Gotcha.
It feels more like something along the lines of these girls are either just dead, and
which is a possibility. Neiru was attacked physically, so that like there's a possibility that she just never woke up.
Right. Or this is a thing of where they're being basically brought to a similar place in some measure, and whenever they're there, they get to interact with each other, and in those interactions, they're getting like monitored or studied or something like that.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me in this episode, and I don't know if it would have let me know what you thought of it, but the detail about the teacher and the cats. That felt oddly specific.
Okay. Yeah.
And
go ahead.
There were a couple things that I thought potentially of this. One is
okay.
that if the person's a predator, they have a bunch of cats as like they can have an adorable animal or whatever that lures in people or something.
That's
I don't know,
literally
right?
what I thought.
But the other thing that it made me think of is that we almost never get details of things in the world outside of like Ai's room and then things.
And then the kitchen and stuff.
Yeah, the kitchen and things like that. But for the most part, it's we're walking around in places that theoretically could be the egg world or the place where they get the eggs or an egg world itself, right? Yeah. And I don't know, it gave me a weird vibe, like as a writer
in the Matrix.
Like as a writer, putting details about descriptions of the environment and things is something that is very intentional, right? And especially when it's done as rarely as it is here. Right? So the fact that it's just like, he has like 24 cats or whatever it looked like, that feels odd.
Also, just the way that they shot the reveal of it with him like kind of looking at the room, being kind of menacing and
like
moving around and stuff like that. There's a lot of just creepy just little things with regards to the way he seems to move around.
Yep.
That whole thing there.
But then the fact that, like, he's the uncle of Momoe, that gives a bit more, like different groundings and connections and things like that. And maybe if he does end up being a predator and he's, like, the final boss and stuff, that's a way that, she can be more connected to that final conflict, maybe. But, like... I don't know.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Like, this episode had a lot of stuff in it that gives me pause. That just makes me wonder.
Oh, yeah. So, he adopts a lot of rescue cats.
And that could totally be a thing of where, no, he's actually a really sweet teacher and nothing happened with Koito or anything like that. And he's just a shockingly, like, caring guy.
Yeah, but the way it was shot, if it's a red herring just for the sake of drawing tension out, that's great.
It was very effective at that.
It did a good job, but there is just this really, really freaky way that they're doing this. And while I would say that there's a possibility that this is all to feed into the idea that Otoai is trying to throw, all kinds of obfuscation in the path, to make it seem like this is the story that she wants to see it as. I definitely see it more in this guy could just be a real problem here. Yeah. But who knows?
And they even brought up the whole thing of how the mom trusts him so much. It's like, oh God, is this actually going to be one of those things where she tries to tell the mom and she doesn't believe her or something? But
that brings the conflict out of the egg world.
Right, which is weird because then it would feel like there would need to be 2 finales.
Yep. Yeah. So,
Yep.
But y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if ain't that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.